This place is just incredible. Lima, Peru, and Santiago, Chile are often overlooked by tourists to South America who opt for places like Machu Picchu or the mountains of Patagonia. I've had the privilege of exploring both of these Latin American West Coast metropolises, and let me just say, if they aren't on your travel radar, they should be. As the capitals of Peru and Chile respectively, both cities are densely packed with distinctive cultures, architecture, and cityscapes built on the bones of ancient civilizations. Here on A Sense of Travel, my goal is to capture all 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural wonders around the world as possible so that I can accurately immerse you into the physical experience of these places through the screen. That said, today I'm diving into more than just the things you can experience through photography and bullet lists. How do Lima, Peru, and Santiago, Chile stack up in their visual megacity environs, the way the air smells, the delicious culinary classics that define their taste palates, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, the way the air feels, and the ambience and lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere? We'll find out today in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, Lima, Peru versus Santiago, Chile. Before we take on the senses, let's take a quick look at the cities by the numbers. Lima is the capital of the colorful and ancient Peru, sprawling along the edge of the country's Pacific coastline. The city itself is among the largest in the world with over 10 million residents, with the greater metro area including an additional million people. While not quite as large, Santiago is still quite sizable. The capital of Chile and sitting in a basin along the Andes Mountains, the city proper is home to over 6 million people with nearly 7 million in its metro area. Both cities and the respective countries sit on South America's mountainous west coast and have been home to vibrant civilizations for millennia. So the first thing to look at when stacking up Lima and Santiago is perhaps the most obvious: their dense, historic cityscapes. We'll kick off in Lima. Lima is a sprawling metropolis, and surrounding that sprawling city on 3 separate sides are mountainous, beige hills covered in arid, desert brush. On the other side, the gray-blue waves of the Pacific Ocean crash into lush, green, rocky cliffsides. The architecture of Lima meshes a blend of Arabian, colonial Spanish, and mid-century modern designs, along with the more humble and simplistic facades typical of much of Latin America. Now, Lima can get a bit shinier in the glass, skyscraping San Isidro district, which sits not too far from the festive, block party-like atmosphere of Miraflores, where parks littered with hundreds of tabby cats, classic lighthouses, and golden-lit Baroque cathedrals await. So here in John F. Kennedy Park, there are hundreds of just little tabby and Manx cats just wandering about. And Brando's made some friends. In contrast, you'll find that most of the buildings in the heart of the city are a bit worn, with aged and grungy facades painted primarily in pale beiges, alongside splashes of bright blues, oranges, greens, and yellows. In places like the Barranco district, those facades become a bit warmer and more polished. So we're here in the Barranco district, which is south of Miraflores in Lima. And the atmosphere is so different here, but it's so colorful and alive. Miraflores was amazing, don't get me wrong. But it's just colorful and almost tropical paradisey. It feels a bit more bohemian. You know, you have street music, guitarists, the buildings are very colorful and decorated in art and murals. There are little boutique cafes everywhere. It's like if golden hour could be personified in a city. At the heartbeat of Lima is its Centro Histórica, much of which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Plaza Mayor might be the most beautiful and peaceful main plazas of any major city I've visited so far, elegant buildings of deep beige and weathered stone, including the National Cathedral of Peru topped with the staple twin bell towers and the municipal palace, protected by an iron gate and royally dressed guards, surround the stone-clouded plaza, centerpieced by a soft bronze fountain, patches of vibrant green grass, and a ring of towering palm trees. Filled with low-rises, incredibly green trees, and dense traffic day-round, the outer edges of Lima's historic center are a bit grungy and dirty, but they burst at the seams with Peruvian culture. Walking through the district, you'll find many street market stands selling fresh fruits, juices, canned drinks, and various snacks, from packaged labels to locally made street food. In many parts of the city, like Miraflores and the Plaza Mayor, higher-end shops, contrasting colorful and white facades, decorative and definitively European-inspired architecture, weathered marble tiles, and a strong pedestrian focus create a more elegant cityscape. Now, bursts of color are frequent here, like in the River District, where a mountain covered in a rainbow of homes sits, tightly stacked and packed together. A beautiful sight that immediately reminded me of the Emperor's New Groove. Much like Lima, and although slightly smaller, Santiago, Chile is the anchor of a sprawling metropolis that feels far larger from above than its population might suggest. One of the key differences, of course, is that instead of the Pacific Ocean binding one edge of that sprawl, the jagged and rocky Andes Mountains surround the city in a basin, blanketed by balcony-adorned high-rises in shades of browns, beiges, dark pinks, rustic reds, and washed-out oranges. The mountainous backdrop, best viewed from atop Sky Costanera, the tallest skyscraper in South America, is remarkable, and the peaks are reminiscent of foreboding, mile-high tidal waves, threatening to crest and drop at any moment. Within that urban sea, you'll find a cityscape layered with very distinctive neighborhood districts, each with its own unique character, ambience, and flavor. At the heart of these distinctive neighborhoods is the city center, or Centro. Like Lima, Santiago's historic core surrounds a lively central square, here called the Plaza de Armas. A bit grungy and filled with hundreds of people, the square is adorned with sculptures, thick-based palm trees, a central fountain, the Museum of Natural History, and the stately, ornate double bell towers of the Santiago Metropolitan Cathedral. Centro has a modern and yet gritty feeling. The urban canyons in Centro are lined with lush, green trees, accompanied by pedestrian-only outdoor arcades, which are also tree-lined. In these outdoor arcades, and even on the regular side streets, street vendors are at every turn selling day-to-day products, fresh fruits, and, most commonly, empanadas. Almost every building surface and statue podium is layered with graffiti here. The grit and the grunge of Central Santiago just adds to the charm, in my opinion, especially in neighborhoods like Bella Vista, a hip bohemian spot with its own unique flavor. Much lower to the ground here, the buildings are only about 1 to 2 stories in this neighborhood, Bella Vista is covered top to bottom in beautiful, colorful, and expressive street art, contrasting the other street tags found throughout Centro. There's certainly a grungy, hipster, and artful vibe to the tree-lined neighborhoods, and a much more intimate feel than in the heart of the city. Food halls, microbreweries, and theaters occupy the storefronts, and the bustle of college students from the nearby university fills the air. Central Santiago and the Providencia district can feel like night and day. While both are important elements to the Santiago experience, Providencia contrasts the historic core with towering glass skyscrapers gleaming in the sunlight, shiny facades on its balcony-adorned residential high-rises lining the much wider tree-lined streets, towering palm trees, and stunning vistas of the surrounding mountains. There's little to no graffiti in this part of the city, in stark contrast to Centro, in which almost every surface is coated. To sum it up quickly, Lima is a colorful, semi-arid and yet beachy metropolis with an intriguing Spanish colonial past, leisurely beachside neighborhoods, a bit of grunge, and Emperor's New Groove reminiscent hillside communities, while Santiago's mountainous cityscape is a bit more grounded and earth-toned, with a distinctive contrast between an edgier, more youthful vibe and a modern, shiny, skyscraping Chilean metropolis of the 21st century. The city's overall color palettes differ quite a bit regarding the overall cityscape, as indicated here. When you see a video or a picture of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component of that is the way the air smells. Let's see how Lima and Santiago stack up. Lima's scentscape is interesting because while the city is technically not tropical, there's a lot of tropical influence. The Pacific Ocean brings wafts of salt water through the warm air, alongside various florals, musty stone, and auto fumes from the dense traffic. As you imagine yourself wandering Lima's golden-tinted streets, the sense of cooking food from various restaurants, commercial air fresheners, and street eateries fill your nostrils. In more touristy areas like Miraflores, you'll probably notice a lot of chlorine. All things considered, a Lima-scented candle, were I to make one, would include the notes of tropical foliage, ozone, stone, saltwater, and frying oil. Being further inland and considerably further south, Santiago's scentscape is an entirely different experience. For one, the air in Santiago is quite dry, so the smells that waft up to your nostrils here aren't generally as strong.
We were talking about how even though it's technically still summer here, there's almost like a crisp fall air outside, even though it's 85 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
In terms of like how the place smells, I don't know, you thought...
There's not any like particular like notes, but I think our unscientific hypothesis
Always.
it would be that there's not a lot of humidity in the air, so particles can attach to create that smell.
However, that musky scent of concrete, a bit of auto fumes, and sizzling foods from the countless street stands, restaurants, and markets, particularly empanadas, breeze throughout the city center, even if only subtly. Santiago's rugged, arid, mountainous landscape means that throughout the city, but especially in places like Parque Metropolitan or Cerro Santa Lucia, you'll notice the sense of dry earth, desert greenery, and musty stone. All things considered, if I created a Santiago scented candle, it would include the notes of sun-baked concrete, ozone, freshly fried empanadas, dry earth, and quile trees. Let me know in the comments which of these two cities has a scent profile that you prefer more. Maybe I'll create these candles one day after all. I've noticed over the years that people, at least in the United States, can often perceive all Latin American food to be the same and interchangeable. I've never quite understood this, but if that's still your persuasion, I'm here to set the record straight. While there may be a little bit of overlap, the tastes of Lima, Peru and Santiago, Chile have distinctive identities of their own. Let's take a look at how they stack up. The tastes of Lima are just as influenced by the salty Pacific Ocean as the city itself. Light, fresh, and dance-inducing, here are just a few of the tastes that I tried that I felt really captured the city. Pisco Sours. In pantomime, my Airbnb host described Peru's national drink to me this way. 1. Thumbs up. 2. It's time to salsa. Pisco Sours are made from pisco liquor alongside citrus juice, simple syrup, and eggs. Pisco Sours are delicious, but as the name implies, are indeed very sour. At a 4-ounce pour of liquor, it's easy to understand why only 2 of these will have you on the dance floor. Causa. Causa is another quintessential Peruvian entree consisting of yellow potato, avocado, mayonnaise, and meat, in this case, crab. The mayo and crab are strong in this dish, but delicious nonetheless. Now, causa is a dish that predates the Spanish conquest of Peru and is a source of great Peruvian national pride. Peruvian ceviche. Ceviche is one of Peru's culinary claims to fame, and after a dish from Punto Azul, it's easy to see why. With fresh fish doused heavily in a lemon sauce and served alongside giant white corn and potatoes, Peruvian ceviche is both rich and light. Peru's cuisine may feel lighter and more nautical, but Chile's classics come sizzling, fried, meat-heavy, and mouth-watering. Here are a few of the quintessential Chilean tastes that I was able to capture during my visit to Santiago. Empanadas de piño.
It seems like we keep stumbling across empanadas and each one is better than the last one. This one we found in San Alfonso, and it was homemade right in front of our very eyes. So, I don't know, Brenda, what do you think?
It's delicious. I have it.
He thinks it's good too.
While I tried many of these in Santiago, the best was found at a small market in San Jose del Maipo, where the empanadas are freshly made and golden baked, with heavy cheese, egg, and Chilean beef inside. Churrasco. At a small food truck hall in Centro, I tried a Chilean staple called churrasco, which is a blend of seasoned beef and grilled onions, topped with an egg, and served on top of thick, crunchy fries. Much like the other Chilean dishes you'll see, this one was deliciously heavy. Sopaipillas. Sopaipillas are small, griddled pastries that can be found in street stands throughout Santiago. Golden brown and soft, these little guys are drizzled in what appears to be mayonnaise, adding a savory sense to the otherwise doughy snack.
We have been searching for sopapilla for several days now, so this is a really euphoric moment for us.
The tastes of Lima are best captured by their fresh, fishy, and, dare I say, energizing sensations, whereas the tastes of Santiago bring a crispy, hearty, and meaty flavor palette to the table. And they're both delicious. And of course, this is also not even close to a full list of the defining tastes of each city. Let's suppose for a moment that you could step into a photo or video of Lima. What would it sound like? There are really 2 sides to the soundscape of Lima, and it depends on which area of the city you're experiencing. Given the sheer size and auto-dependency of Lima, the constant sounds of auto traffic and the sirens, horns honking, and engine revving that it entails fill your ears.
One thing I've really noticed about Lima is that even though it's a humongous city, 10 million people, it doesn't have a very dense urban feel. Like, there's a lot of auto traffic. Not the most walkable place ever, but it is still really beautiful.
In the more residential parts of Lima, away from the tourist hotspots, you'll hear people talking quite loudly, craftsmen working in street stands and construction sites, and the grumble of bus engines. On the flip side, Lima's beachside districts can feel like an entirely different world. In places like Miraflores and Parenco, the sounds of crowds of local and tourist pedestrians, street music, dancing, chatter, and crashing Pacific waves fill the air. To envision yourself in Santiago through your imagination, take all of the sensory elements we've explored so far and layer them beneath the sounds of a huge, bustling metropolis. The sounds of tons of auto traffic, motorcycle engines, and bustling crowds of pedestrians fill that brisk, dry, and hazy air practically everywhere throughout the city. The soundtrack of the city expands to include large trickling fountains, guitar-strumming street musicians, and passionate preachers calling out into the otherwise relaxing air.
So we're out here in Plaza de Armas, which is the center of Santiago's historic core. So here you'll have the National History Museum, you've got the Santiago Metropolitan Cathedral, which is one of the main icons of the city. And it's an interesting atmosphere out here. You've got people of all sorts of types. I mean, you've got a preacher out here preaching to a crowd, you've got tour groups, you've got local artists, you've got street musicians, and then just families out with their kids. And so it's a very diverse atmosphere with a lot of different stimulating sounds going on.
Speaking of those passionate preachers, although there's been a sharp decline in Santiago residents who identify with Catholicism or Protestantism, you'll hear Latin hymns echoing in and around the churches throughout town, even up on the hillsides of Parque Metropolitan. Here's how the soundscapes of Lima and Santiago stack up. Lima sits on the edge of the Pacific Ocean along Peru's coastline, but that doesn't make it tropical. In fact, Lima has a desert climate, albeit with subtropical temperature ranges. In other words, it can still get pretty hot and sticky here, but the city rarely sees rain. That lush foliage essentially just soaks up the misty and humid, salty air to stay bright and green. Santiago, on the other hand, has what's known as a cool, semi-arid climate with some Mediterranean patterns. Summertime in Santiago can be pretty warm and definitely dry, but the winters are wet and rainy, hence the reason it's classified as semi-arid and not a desert. Either way, there aren't a ton of weather extremes here in Santiago, but it is far drier and cooler than its northern neighbor. I'm a strong proponent of the idea that to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your imagination roam a bit wild. After all, urban legends, mythological fairy tales, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide, and the ancient stories and lore that Peru and Chile bring to the table are unrivaled. Letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and the charm in different places. Let's take a look at the ambience that each city evokes. We'll kick off in Lima. Lima is a city that feels as Peruvian as a massive city can get. I say this because while you may imagine places like Machu Picchu and luscious mountains covered in colorful villages and lots of llamas when you think of Peru, you're not going to find that in a city of 10 million people. But there's still that fascinating feeling throughout Lima that you're living in the continued story of ancient Peru, especially in museums like the Museo Larco, the colorful neighborhoods along the River Rimac, and the strange but intriguing shows at the Brisas del Titicaca. The ambience of Lima isn't exclusively in the realm of the ancient Peruvians, though, or even the Incans. There's that added layer of Spanish colonialism and empirical regality that drips over Lima's historic city center, a layer that, interestingly, is seen by many as just another chapter in the frequent empirical changes that have occurred throughout Peru's history. Some of those stories, like the founding of Lima's National Cathedral, paint an almost peaceful picture. Almost.
So this used to be the shrine of Punta Inti, and actually Cuscoan prince lived on this area. Francisco Pizarro, the founder of Lima, actually made this a plot of land of church, and he forced the Cuscoan prince to renounce his assets on paper so that the church didn't usurp his land, and that's how the church started to begin its roots.
Then there's that beachside, nautical sensation that comes complete with surfer bros, lighthouses, palm trees, and sunscreen. All in all, the ambience of Lima is as distinctive as its history, as colorful as its ancient art, and as fun-loving, kind, and communal as a spontaneous dance party in JFK Park. Santiago's lore is just as ancient and just as storied, but with a distinctive difference from Lima, although, interestingly, there's a shared history between both Peru and Chile with the Incan Empire. A big part of the difference in the vibes and sensations between the two cities really comes down to the natural surroundings and national identity. Santiago's location in a basin amidst the rocky, arid, southern Andes mountains gives a remote and almost hidden sensation to the city, almost as if it was tucked away into Patagonia itself. At the same time, Santiago feels like one of the epicenters of South America, especially in places like Providencia, where the Sky Costanera, the tallest on the continent, pierces the sky above a sea of sharp, modern glass and steel. Funnily enough, I actually got my strongest impression of the Santiago region as a whole outside the city itself, in a place called San Jose del Maipo. Dominated by the rocky, desert brush-covered mountains, this small town feels slower, older, and far more localized than Chile's capital city. Cobbled roads, weathered buildings, and dozens of locally operated mom-and-pop cafes line the small grid of streets. Returning to Santiago after this part of the adventure really put into perspective that while the city may be bustling, chaotic, and fast-paced, the underlying identity is one of community, family, a deep connection with the rugged natural landscape, and a shared, proud Chilean identity. The idea here isn't to pit these two cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there's so much world to discover, experience, and explore. Thanks for diving into the South American capitals of Lima and Santiago with me today, and stay tuned for more city comparisons in the near future. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.